Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashley. And thank you all for having me and for tuning in. So my goal today is to make the law school process, or at least the law school admissions process, feel a little bit less daunting and overwhelming than I know it definitely can feel. Y'all are already 10 steps ahead of me by even just attending this presentation. When I got started on my own law school journey, I had not taken the time to talk to anyone, so I was kind of fumbling around in the dark. So taking the step to actually get the information in the first place is a great place to start. So I do have a PowerPoint that I will go ahead and share now. I think it's showing, hopefully. This is my first time using this platform, so we're gonna make it work. So as we get started on applying to law school and kind of figuring all of that out, I wanted to go over some of the frequently asked questions. It may answer some of the questions that y'all have sent to Ashley now. The first one that we get quite often is, what should my major be? The first thing I want you to hear from me and to take away from this presentation is there is no mold of a perfect law student. If every student came to us with exactly the same major, the same interests, the same jobs, clubs, organizations, law school generally would be very boring. So we enjoy seeing students with their own experiences, pursuing things that they've enjoyed, whether that is political science, whether that's biology, whether that's fine arts or dance or mathematics or engineering. Whatever you'd like to study, if you're interested in it, we want to see that you are doing something to grow as an individual and that you're able to do well in that field. So don't let yourself be limited by what you think a law school is looking for. With that being said, we also hear a lot, what kind of classes should I be taking? So for example, if you are in a less writing intensive major, so if, for example, if you are a science or math major and you do less research and writing that's similar to the law school style, I would encourage you to take some writing intensive courses. If you are in a more liberal arts major, maybe in English or history, and you're not taking as many philosophy classes, I would encourage you to sign up just to get your brain thinking in different ways. There are no prerequisites. We get a lot of questions about what classes do I have to have before going to law school. There are no prerequisites, but taking some more writing classes, some more different type of thinking classes will at least help kind of prepare you for the law school setting. If you're not able to take those classes, that's okay. It's not going to be held against you. But taking them just kind of gives you a little bit of a leg up and getting yourself prepared for the academic rigor that law school will be in the future. So as I said, law schools are just looking for people that are going to bring some diversity to our community, whether that's diversity of thought, diversity of religion, background, ethnicity. We like to see a diverse group of folks in the law school, and we like to see people that are going to commit themselves to our community and kind of pushing each other forward and pushing each other to think outside of your regular boundaries. So if, like I said, if everybody came to us in the exact same fashion, the exact same mold, the exact same numbers, I actually probably wouldn't have a job. They wouldn't need us, the admissions committee, to do the holistic review that we do, to go through those personal statements and to find people that are going to elevate our community and just kind of bring a new type of fresh energy and thought to the law school. What is the minimum? So we get a lot of questions about minimum LSAT, minimum GPA. There is no hardline minimum, but each school has their own median. Now, if you are below the school's median, that does not mean that you're automatically out of consideration. Most students who apply are a splitter in one form of the other, meaning they either have a high LSAT and a low GPA or vice versa. So if you do fall into that category, don't worry, most people do. So what you're going to want to do is look, how far off of the median am I? Are there other ways in the application that I can make up these differences? There are some really great resources online at lsac.org and at 7Sage, that is the number 7 and Sage like the spice, where you can actually plug in your LSAT scores and your GPA and kind of see, without a guarantee, the percentage of students with similar numbers who are admitted to all of the schools in the country. So you can kind of get a sense of where would be best to apply, where would be a little bit of a reach, where would be a little bit closer to your numbers. And that way you can spread out your applications to schools that you are interested in, some that you have a very good chance of getting into, some that you're kind of within their range, and some that may be a little bit above your median, a little bit above your range. but you never know. You could be the person that they take because your personal statement and your resume are just glowing, and that you could be the person that they're looking for. So don't count yourself out, but looking in that gives you a little bit of a realistic idea of what you're getting yourself into with your scores. We hear a lot, what are SOFs? There's a lot of lingo in the admissions world. SOFs are basically everything besides your LSAT and GPA. What organizations are you in? What kind of community service do you do? What things are you interested in? Are you a non-traditional student? Do you have work experience? What other things are you doing? Did you write a book? Have you started an organization? So we've seen some really amazing things that students are doing that are technically considered soft, but they're quite impressive and not very soft. So these are everything besides your LSAT and GPA. Speaking of jobs and what we're doing with that, we get a lot of questions about legal internships and if they're required, or if I did one, is that going to be a guarantee that I get in? The answer to both of those questions is no. Internships, truthfully, are more helpful for you to see what lawyers actually do. Is it as sexy and fast-paced as TV shows? Truthfully, no. It's a lot of reading and writing, and if that is what you find sexy, then you're going to be a great lawyer. You're going to be fine and happy in this field. But if you don't have an opportunity to do a legal internship, the law school, the admissions committee is not going to hold that against you. Like I said, we don't expect any specific thing from any specific student. So for example, if most legal internships truthfully are unpaid, so if you are working to pay for your tuition to get yourself through college, we're not going to hold that against you. We're going to see, hey, this person worked and maintained a job, maintained a steady GPA. That shows these different types of skills, that shows these different types of work ethic and things that we can see them being a good law student. So if you can get a legal internship, great. If you're interested, if you enjoy what the lawyers are doing, that just answers the question for you, is law school the place for me? And if you're not able to participate in a legal internship at this moment in time, don't count yourself out. We'll find time for you later for sure. So the law school application checklist, the bare bones of it can be whittled down to this list here. So when you start to get overwhelmed and feel yourself like there's too much to do, there are too many things to take care of, this is literally every component of the application. And sometimes when you look at it like that, it makes it feel a little bit less daunting. The first thing you need to do is create an account at lsac.org. If you haven't already, I suggest, if you're in your sophomore, junior year, I suggest maybe you do. There is a place on there that you can, and senior year, of course, I hope you already have one, but there's a place where you can actually select to allow law schools to contact you. So that's actually how we generate lists when we send out emails. We're hosting our own series of webinars within the next few months. I sent out an email nationwide, but I specifically targeted every student who was interested in a school in Texas. So there were quite a few names. If you didn't receive that, you either don't have an account or you didn't select Texas as a state that you're interested in. But if you're interested in those webinars, email us and we'll get those to you. So yes, LSAC is going to be the central hub of everything you do. It is where you'll go to register for the LSAT, where you'll submit your transcripts, where the law school applications actually live. So everything will be taking place right here in this one spot. So whenever you do get started, it has so much information, more information than you could ever want, but personal statement, resume, letters of recommendation, all of this goes to LSAC, and we're going to talk about each of these items individually. But as you can see, this is the entire application. When it comes down to the very bare bones of it, this is what we're looking for, and this is all that you need in order to submit a complete application. So the first thing that a lot of folks need is your LSAT test, the law school admissions test. Just when you thought you were safe, you finished the SAT, you did the ACT, TAKS, TOS, STAR, whatever, you thought you were done with the standardized tests. Not quite yet, almost, but not quite. So the LSAT score range is a 120 to a 180. The national average tends to be about a 152. TAKS median for this year is a 156. All that means half the class is above that, half the class is below that. So again, if you're below, that doesn't mean you're not getting in. We'll just look to make that up in other areas of your application. The LSAT I'm talking a little bit pre-COVID, was offered 7 times between July and April. With the current, with everything going on currently in the world, they have been able to adjust. They have decreased the testing for this semester, but we're still working on it. So under normal conditions, which we're hoping that will return hopefully next semester, we'll see if they begin to update this and update the law school soon. But a traditional LSAT is now a digital test. Basically, the students will show up to a testing site. You get an LSAC tablet, and you'll take the test on the tablet. So it's so very important that as you're practicing and as you're teaching yourself how to take this test, you do as many timed practice tests as you possibly can in a digital format. There are a ton of books that you can buy and test and take in pen and paper, but at this point, now that the test is completely digital, the most helpful medium will be online. So with that, there are 5 35-minute sections taking the digital test. The sections basically are logical reasoning, which is also known as logic games. Depending on who you are and how weird you may be, this may be actually very fun. I love logic games. Logic games is also getting phased out of the LSAT within the next 2 or 3 years. So depending on where you are in your college career, you may get to completely miss logic games. For some, it's their favorite. For some, it's definitely their least favorite. Basically, the logic games, it's almost like a riddle, a puzzle. For example, A, B, and C go to the rec on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. A goes swimming on Tuesday only if B goes and plays tennis on Wednesdays. What is C doing on Thursdays, right? And then you'll have more information and need to kind of fill in the blanks. And so that's logical reasoning. There's a reading comprehension section where you get long passages of text. It could be anything from science to history to art, nature. They kind of write about whatever they'd like. And you're not reading in the traditional sense for content, but rather for context, right? What is the author trying to convey with this type of sentence, what this parallel structure, and X, Y, and Z. The next section, you'll actually have 2 sections of the argumentative reasoning, which are short paragraphs where you'll try to deduce what types of arguments or parallelisms are occurring in the paragraph and the answer choices. So it's, again, you don't actually have to know anything going in to take the LSAT, but you definitely need to practice the type of thinking and skills that are tested. With the situation that we're all currently in, LSAC has begun offering the LSAT Flex. I believe they are offering it through the rest of this year. The October and November tests are scheduled to be LSAT Flex, essentially meaning they are at-home proctored tests. You need a camera, you need audio, you need a quiet, safe place to take this test. And if there are, for any reasons, you don't have the access to a spot like that, or you don't have availability of a camera, you don't have availability of a testing space, anything like that, please contact LSAC and they can help set that up for you. But one of the benefits, I would say it's a benefit, the LSAT test is a very long test. It's very draining. It can be pretty exhausting. It's a little bit of a mind marathon. With the LSAT Flex, they've actually cut it down to 3 sections. So 1 logic reasoning, 1 reading comprehension, and 1 argumentative reasoning. So it's a little bit less exhausting to take it, shorter. With that, the score distribution is a little bit different. All 3 sections are scored equally. On a regular one, each one is weighted a little bit differently. Regardless if you're taking the traditional LSAT or the LSAT Flex, you must do a 35-minute writing section separate and aside from the actual test. So under regular conditions, you would be able to take the test. I think it opens, you go online, do the same thing, camera, audio, at home. You have 35 minutes to complete it. What we're looking for is, were you able to stay on the topic? Were you able to argue both sides of the point and pick a side? Nobody is expecting this writing sample to be your golden standard law school writing, because you're not in law school yet, so you haven't learned that. We're looking to see, were you able to read the question, make some sort of analysis, and then answer on topic. You'd be shocked at how many people decide to just not answer this question, or almost make a joke of it, thinking that the admissions folks do not read this section, and we do, and it does not turn out good for those folks who think that it's kind of just a joke, right? It is so incredibly important to complete the writing section as soon as you possibly can. We just got word from LSAC last month that as law schools, we will not be able to receive your scores or your application for that matter until you do the writing sample. So it's really important to just knock it out, get it out of the way as soon as you're done taking the test. So with all of this, a lot of folks may not know really where to start. And my suggestion to you would be Khan Academy. It's the only company so far that has partnered with LSAC. There's information about the company and the prep program on their website, but most importantly, it is 100% free and totally online. And so it's a great place to start. It may be all that you need. There are broad spectrums of folks on preparation for the LSAT. There may be people that study for months and months and months and use a tutor and a program and X, Y, and Z. They may increase their score. I've definitely seen some that did not see an increase, right? I was actually one. I took a course and I did not see an increase in my score from beginning to end. It was very disappointing, but I also learned the course that I took was not conducive to my study habits and styles and skills. So that is just the reality that happens sometimes. I've also seen some students, and we are jealous of them, but there's nothing we can do, that will literally watch a 2-hour YouTube video and they figure it out. It's a weird test, and if it clicks with you, it does clicks, and if it not, that's when we got to kind of dig into the studying and figure out what we need to do to improve the scores. So with that Khan Academy, you basically take a diagnostic test, and then depending on how much time you have, you can make your own study schedule, take as many practice tests as you need. Because they're partnered with LSAC, they also have access to 5 undisclosed tests that no other company does. And so you get a little bit more practice with those timed tests. Again, the timed portion is the important part there. There are also different LSAT course scholarships that you can apply for. In Texas, the Texas Appleseed is a diversity scholarship for a free Kaplan course. And those are, I mean, it's worth just Googling to see if there's anything in your area or anything available now, scholarship-wise. So what else do we look for at besides the LSAT, your GPA? Those are going to be those soft factors, right? One great way to get through, and truthfully, I think one of the 3 most important parts of your application, so LSAT, GPA, and personal statement. The personal statement is going to be your opportunity to show the law school who you are as a human being, aside from your LSAT and aside from your GPA. It gives us a little bit more context as to just who you are as a person and how you got to this point in your life that law school is your next step. It also shows us, more importantly, your ability as a writer, right? Again, nobody expects you to be a legal writer or a legal theorist at this point. And if you are, kudos to you, or the professors are probably going to undo that, unlearn, right? Whatever you've learned and rebuild. But the personal statement, it is so incredibly important. And I think it actually might be the first tip on here, actually it is, to read the prompt. So each law school, like I said, has their own application. Each application has its own page of instructions, and it is so important to read those instructions and give the school only what they're asking for. If they are asking for a personal statement about adversities you've faced and they only want 2 pages double-spaced, only give them that. We at Tech, we don't have a prompt, so you have a little bit more freedom to write what you kind of would like to write about. We do have a space limitation, which is 2 pages double-spaced. More does not mean better. We have definitely seen a personal statement that was 99 pages, single space. Nobody read it, and that was not good or beneficial to that student in any way. So follow the prompt is so incredibly important, because at the end of the day, you are applying to a professional school, and being able to show that you can follow directions is always a good first impression, right? If you send in a 5-page single-space personal statement, that's already a red flag that you don't follow directions. And that's not to say that that will disqualify you from admission, but it will raise a little bit of a flag, put a little note in the admissions committee counselor head, this person is not following directions, right? So once you have been able to determine, is there a prompt? What is it? Is there not? What am I going to write about? That's the next question. And so we encourage you to brainstorm, make a list. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to write a sob story. I don't know why I thought that's what you had to write. I was trying to make one up, not make one up. I was trying to make a dramatized story of my life. My mom worked for Child Protective Services our entire life. We had a very normal, very good childhood, and I was like, I don't have anything to write about. That is not, you don't have to write about a traumatic moment in your life if you don't have one, / if you don't want to. It can be literally the most mundane thing, as long as it's written well. That's really all that matters. We had a student write about volunteering at an animal shelter and the work that she did after Hurricane Harvey and going down to Houston and basically helping and getting all of this to say, it was so incredibly well written. I learned a lot about this student, and kind of they led that into wanting to do animal advocacy. So it was a great narrative. I learned about the student. They were able to kind of put me in the space with them, describing the rain, describing what they saw. It was very easy to connect with the student, and that is the result of a well-written personal statement. It wasn't traumatic, it wasn't over the top, it was this community service thing that the student enjoys doing and how it impacted their life and why they want to go to law school. In that, the tone came across as very sincere, very conversational. They weren't trying to be lofty with their goals. They weren't trying to, impress anybody. They were really just telling who they were at the core of themselves as a person. In the same sense, if you've heard me chat about this before, if you've ever come to any of my talks about personal statements, one of my very favorite ones, a student wrote about spilling coffee on himself before his first day of an internship. That's it. That was the whole personal statement. But it was so well written. And again, he put you in the story with him. He was in the subway, the subway was shaking, the car was going, he spilled coffee, kind of, just went into playing it off, showed that he had a good sense of humor, very humble person, ended up talking a little bit about the work that he did there, how he, was able to take the positive energy and do all these things. And it was really well written. And just about spilling coffee on his shirt. That's how it started, and that's kind of where it came to in the end. And the student, one of my very favorite students, has graduated, but did a great job. And again, just a regular run-of-the-mill kind of thing. This is both on the do's page and the don't page on my next page, but personalizing your statement to the law school can be beneficial if you do it carefully and thoughtfully. If for example, I was very interested in the family law clinic here at Texas Tech. I crafted my personal statement to talk about that clinic, why I would like to be involved with that clinic. And there was no way that you could have confused it with me just saying, school X is a great school and puts out great advocates and I want to go to school X. And then my next one, school Y is a great school and it puts out great advocates and I want to go to school Y. It wasn't one that you could very easily just change the name of the law school and move on, right? I had actually looked into this program and written about specifically this program, who teaches it, all of that good stuff. If you do decide to do that, make sure that you send the correct personal statement to the correct school. Every year, my fellow colleagues and I always receive personal statements and letters of recommendation for one another. Every year, I get information for a student interested in Baylor. Every year, Texas A&M gets information from students interested in tech. It happens. Again, it's not going to mean that you're not getting in, but it shows a little bit of a lack of attention to detail. So if you decide to do this, do it carefully. Make sure that you're sending the right things to the right people. In that personal statement, again, so important to be clear, concise. I have had students call and say, I'm at 4 pages. I can't make it any shorter. And trust me, I promise you, you can make it shorter. You'll have the next 3 years of your life to come into my office and tell me all of your life stories that you'd like to share. But for the purpose of this, two pages double spaced is all that my committee has time for. We had over 1,400 applications last cycle. I have 5, now 6 full-time professors on my committee. All we have time for is 2 pages double spaced. And there are other schools that get 5 times that number of applications. And so they have the space requirement on there for a reason. And we'd prefer to see something, I would prefer, honestly, if it was clear and concise, a page and a half over 4 pages of just kind of all over the place rambling. That page and a half, that's got my vote. Seeking meaningful feedback is also incredibly important, and y'all have some really great folks on main campus that at Texas Tech that are willing to help you with this, in the Career Center, with the pre-law advisor, with professor even. I made the mistake of using my mom as my feedback machine. That was useless. Everything I did was, everything I touched was gold, and my personal statement, I'll be the first to tell you, was not gold. It was pretty boring, well written, but very boring, and honestly did not share that much more about who I was as a person. So it didn't add to my file like it could have. You want somebody who you read it and ask them truthfully, is this my voice? Is this who I am? Does this actually sound like me? Did you learn anything? Are you even interested? Because again, we have to read thousands of these personal statements. And while of course, there's no way that every single one can stand out, yours definitely can. If you really put your voice in it and make it something important to you, it definitely can stand out. And sometimes that can make or break the file. There are some committee meetings where our committee will kind of get into it. Somebody will take a liking to a student based on their personal statement and will stand up for them like, well, I don't think we have space. No, this person needs to be in this school. This person needs to be in this class. And so sometimes can be that make or break point for a file. With that, it's so important to revise it a number of times and to make sure that you proofread it. One of my favorite ways to proofread is to force yourself to read the personal statement out loud, word by word. Get a pencil and point to each word, because you'll be able to catch words that they're there. You use the wrong there, you use the wrong your. You'll be able to catch it, and you'll be able to catch things that just sound kind of weird. So definitely proofreading it and revising it as many times as you can. Again, there are so many personal statements. They didn't even change the font. There are different font styles in the actual personal statement. And so just, again, this is your first impression to a professional school, and we want it to be as good as it possibly can be. So with that being said, of course, there are a number of things that we as admissions counselors would prefer you not to do. The first, legal jargon. You're not in law school yet, don't bother with it. Honestly, lawyers don't write in legal jargon either, unless they have to use specific words or they just choose to use specific words in their filings. Nobody talks like that. No, none of the lawyers actually use complicated legal jargon in their regular narrative conversational writings or dealings. With that being said, you also can't, there has to be a fine balance between don't be too lawyerly, but also don't be too casual, right? While the admissions counselors may, be friendly and open and inviting, we're not totally friends yet, right? Once your students will be pals. Once we meet you a couple times, we're pals. But at the end of the day, this is still, again, a professional application, and we are not the only ones reading these personal statements. Like I said, we have at our school 5, now 6 professors on our admissions committee that are reading these. And so it's very important to kind of take that into account. With that being said, we also get a lot of questions like, what should I write about? What is the perfect personal statement? There's just not one. Looking solely at our committee, each school has a different makeup of their committee, but I am the youngest person on our committee. As a millennial, I love stories. I love to read a narrative. I have on the other side of me a Harvard law graduate, Marine, constitutional law professor. I don't think he likes to read stories that much. He likes more of like a philosophical thinking, more higher level writing. But at the end of the day, we're looking for the same thing. Was this well written? And did we learn something new about this person? And can we see them in our community, right? So finding that balance between being too serious and being too casual. This is also not the place to repeat your resume. We review all parts of your application, and so your resume is a separate thing that we will look at. If there are any specific accomplishments, like for example, you are in a community service organization and maybe you planned a huge event and you really want to talk about that, by all means, go for it, because that is not technically repeating your resume. You're going to actually dive into this event that you did, how you got there, what you did, who it impacted, how it impacted you, what you did for your community, how it felt, you know, what was going on that day, how did you feel that day, how did you feel after, and how all of that relates to wanting to go to law school, right? That's much more than just, I'm in this organization, I did this event. So we have a ton of students who just list all the groups that they're in. Please don't do that, because I've already read it. It's very repetitive, and you lose a chance to highlight some great things about you. Please don't write in third person. All these notes are here because we've had students do them. It's very awkward to read. Danielle wants to go to law school. Danielle did great in this advocacy group. Danielle did these things, and Danielle wants to go to Texas Tech. It's weird talking like that, right? If I had been reading that out loud to revise it, oh, I hope I would have fixed it. Again, like I said, personalizing to each law school, do so very carefully. So do not make the wrong reference to the wrong law school. The personal statement is a place for you to highlight who you are and what you've done. So don't use this place to address weaknesses. That you can do in an addendum, which we'll talk about in a moment, but the personal statement is for you to highlight yourself. So if you had some issues with grades, or something happened on your LSAT test date, or whatever the case may be, save it for somewhere else. The only time that I've seen it actually be kind of effective is the student struggle. We had a student who wrote about struggling with substance abuse at some point in their life, getting arrested, getting involved in the criminal justice system. However, they then talked about how they turned their life around, the number of years they had been in sobriety, the way that they were able to help others with their sobriety, how they were serving their community now. And so they basically took that weakness and showed the growth that they had made with it. That was an effective use of it in the personal statement. Again, because they highlighted who they were as a human being and what they have done. Do not plagiarize. What a weird thing to have to say, but it happens every year. Not necessarily that do we get that at Tech every year, but it happens somewhere in the law school every single year. We hear about it. The personal statement, it's a personal story about your own life. The one that we've got was a personal statement taken from a forum online. It wasn't even good, so that was a waste of everybody's time. The other thing to also remember, law school, the most important thing about being a lawyer is integrity. For those students who did plagiarize, we actually have to report them to the Misconduct and Irregularities Subcommittee of LSAC. You get a red flag on your account, and every law school that you've applied to is notified of that red flag. Terrible way to begin your law school career, right? So don't plagiarize. Even a poorly written personal statement is better than a plagiarized one. Be sure to focus on yourself. The personal statement is about you. If you have a mentor that you love and got you to this place and you want to pay homage to them, that is okay. Don't spend the entire time writing about them. I don't need to know about, you know, your debate coach from high school. I say that's who I wrote about. I tell you, I broke all of these rules. Then we want to know about you, but if there is somebody important that led you to this, you're more than welcome to talk a little bit about them, but bring it back to you. Finally, don't present yourself as overly argumentative. There is a misconception going around the world that, well, I grew up and I spent all my time arguing as a kid and everybody told me I'd be a great lawyer. Argumentative does not a great lawyer make. At the end of the day, 98% of what lawyers do takes place, it just gets settled in negotiations, settlements, mediations, arbitrations. They only go to court about 2% of the cases. So if you are known as a very arrogant or argumentative lawyer, lawyering communities are very small, and very quickly you'll define yourself as somebody that people don't want to work with, right? And so actually being able to mediate and negotiate is a better skill for being a lawyer than being very argumentative. So even if you are very argumentative, don't highlight that. That's not a great thing. One thing that is not on here, but we have been talking about it a lot, and I think there's a general consensus that most admissions people do not find it effective, starting your personal statement with a quote. I've reviewed again thousands of applications. I am relatively green in this industry. My fellow colleagues have reviewed tens of thousands more, and I have not seen an effective use of it. So I would double think that. So we talked a little bit about addendums and now optional statements. So the most general, the most seen addendum is an LSAT or GPA addendum. It's an additional attachment that you can include that will basically just, if there is something in your, academic history, maybe it happens a lot, so don't kick yourself for it happening to you. You came in as a major X and your grades were pretty bad, and then you switch majors and then your grades went up, you found something you were passionate about and then they stayed up and flat. Or you came to, college, it was the first time you were away from home, you were a little bit immature, you got kind of caught up in the college life and your grades suffered. You figured it out, it got better, we see that. Your grades were pretty good and then something happened, you got sick, something personal happened, something happened with your family, they dipped and they came back. We've seen that. All of these things you can write an addendum about, and basically all you're doing is taking control of your narrative and making sure that the committee sees your grades with context. So we will see the grade trends, but if there is something specific, like, they need to know, I hadn't been diagnosed with my ADHD yet, and then I got on medication and my grades stabilized. If there's something that you think we need to know, you can definitely include that in the addendum. Character and fitness, again, integrity is the most important part of law school and being a lawyer generally. So each law school application will have their own set of character and fitness questions. Generally, disclose everything. For ours specifically, there is one for if you've gotten into any kind of trouble in college or any university, community, study abroad, any university of higher learning. And that's everything from even all the way down to a noise violation in your dorm. And I know it feels frivolous and you're like kind of embarrassed, or maybe you had beer in your dorm. Don't do that. Also, you're not the first one, but also don't do it because then you're going to have to disclose it anyway, and it's kind of embarrassing. You need to disclose everything. That honestly, just err on the safe side. Disclose if you got arrested, everything except for a speeding ticket. If that speeding ticket becomes a failure to appear because you ignored it, you gotta disclose that too. So there will be student conduct folks, there will be lawyers, there will be other people in your life that tell you like it's not a big deal, you don't have to disclose it. This is me as a law school representative telling you that you do, because what happens is once you come to law school, you fill out an application so that you can actually study, sit for the bar at some point. They will run, the bar will run, the Board of Law examiners will run an FBI background check, and all that they're doing is making sure that that background check matches the application that we have. And if they match, you're good, and if they don't, they'll send you a scary email, and then you'll have to go through all of these things. So just disclose up front. Having gotten a public intoxication ticket is not going to be the thing that keeps you out of law school, I promise. The things that become an issue and red flags again are if there's repeated incidences, right? Like, oh yeah, I had beer in my dorm, and then I got caught with more beer in my dorm, and then I got caught with more things in my dorm, and then I got a DUI, and then I got a PI, and then I got this, and then I got that. And what that shows to us is a repeated behaviors that may indicate a substance abuse problem, and so we have a bigger issue there. The other thing that's a red flag is incidents of violence. Right? At the end of the day, the people in this building are my responsibility. These are the people that I care about. The folks that are applying, I don't know them yet, and my job is to keep the people in this building safe. So those are the two things that truly do raise a red flag. Other things, and depending on the frequency, it's not so much the act, it's whether or not you're forthcoming in these disclosures. And then finally, a diversity statement. So this is a great way, if there's something else that you want to talk about. Diversity does not have to just be race and ethnicity, although it definitely can be. It can be socioeconomic status, it can be sexual orientation, gender identity. If you are a non-traditional student, you do have a diverse experience, differently abled folks, if you're in the military, different religions. Diversity can be really almost anything. I have to say almost. We had a student whose diversity statement circled around them being our most diverse candidate because they studied abroad and went to a nude beach, and that's not a diversity statement. I've got to just put that out there. So keep that in mind. Diversity can encapsulate all types of diverse experience and thoughts. So the final component of your application will be letters of recommendation. We require 2. We encourage students to ask professors and or supervisors. If you're coming out of college fresh, we expect to see an academic letter in there. If you're a non-traditional student or you're deciding to take a gap year or several, supervisors are fine. We don't necessarily expect an academic letter. Speaking of gap years, law schools, nobody cares if you decide to take one. We're going to be here when you get back. So if you want to take a gap year, by all means do that. If you don't know that you really want to go to law school just yet, you want to go out and teach, or you want to go out and get a real job to save up money, nobody's going to hold that against you. And again, all that does is bring a little bit different experience to your application, right? Who not to ask? Do not ask your, don't ask your parents, don't ask your middle school teachers, don't ask your high school teachers, don't ask your high school, elementary, middle school principals, unless you're working for them or you're doing, like if you're an education major and you're teaching in those high schools, that makes sense as a supervisor. Also, we don't really care about the titles of the people that you're asking, right? We have students who their parents are family friends with somebody, a big name, with the senator, right? But the student has never actually worked for the senator, and the senator doesn't know the student aside from the relationship with their parent. That's not helpful to us at all. I would rather, for example, even if you did intern for the senator, but you work specifically for their chief of staff, I would prefer to see a letter from their chief of staff because they actually know the work that you were doing. I and many of my colleagues are not incredibly impressed just because of a name, right? I'd be way more impressed to see a very solid letter from a chief of staff. These are all the projects they did. Like, wow, what a valuable member of our team, versus from the senator. This person worked here, and then they just repeat your resume. That doesn't give us anything more. Now it's a little bit strange, right? Normally we would tell you guys to go in to their office early, ask. With COVID, maybe not in person asking, but reaching out definitely as early as you can is important. The professors get very busy as the semester progresses. It may get lost in all of their work. So asking early and giving yourself time to maybe send a gentle reminder for a deadline, it's advisable. Asking if they're willing to write you a positive letter of recommendation. Every year we get letters from professors who either don't know the student or truthfully did not like the student. So that's always a shame, because as students, you don't get to see these letters of recommendation. So asking if the professor can give you a positive one is really important. Also, maybe giving, that was the one to ask early. Giving them your transcript, if you're comfortable, giving them your resume so that they can kind of see the things that you've been doing in addition to their class. And depending on the relationship with the professor what you decided to write about in your personal statement, possibly including that with them. Any writing samples if you are asking somebody that maybe you took a semester or 2 ago, so that they can kind of refresh who you are as a student and what you did in their class. Basically giving them like an info packet on you so that they can beef up what they have to say, all the great things plus whatever you've provided for them. And then finally, your resume. This one is easy. Again, follow the prompt. There are some schools that have a page limitation. There are some schools that are actually very specific on that. We prefer to see content over formatting, so I would rather just see a plain run-of-the-mill resume. Again, take this to your career service people. They have seen thousands of them, and they know what this should look like, and they know what the law schools and all professional schools really are looking for. This is your best bet. I live right next door to our career service person here, and we took my husband's resume to her. We're adulting now, right? And we're still utilizing our career service folks. An objective line, you don't need it. And now you have more space to talk about the great things that you've been doing. Your objective is to go to law school. We know that, so you don't need to include it. The things that you want to emphasize are here, the activities that you've done, the experiences, anything really showing your professional skills and your community involvement, because at the end of the day, being a lawyer is being a community servant, so we definitely do want to see that you've been working with your community in some way. We don't need to see what you've done in high school. If you don't have anything to include at this moment, like since high school, that may be a red flag. That might be a little bit of an issue. And again, it can be, I've only worked, I didn't have any time for student organizations. We understand. Or I only did student organizations, I had gotten a scholarship, or my parents were able to help me, or X, Y, and Z. I only did student orgs. That's also okay. We just need to make sure that you've been involved doing something in college other than going to class and then going and watching TV, right? Also proofread this. We've gotten some where folks just took the template off of Microsoft Word and then didn't update any of it. I don't know how that happens, but it does. All right, so that is what I have for you today. On our website, we actually have a virtual events page that has all of the events and webinars we have coming up, some older videos that were previously recorded if you want to check those out. Lots of good stuff. We're doing Zoom hours. We're doing everything we can to connect with y'all. So that's all I have for you today, but I'm happy to take questions now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. I know I was taking notes, so I'm sure students have a ton of notes. I think we did have some questions that did come in that I think you answered, but maybe if you have any tips for someone who is stumped and just has no idea on picking a topic for their personal statement. Have there been any tricks or hacks that you've seen work with students or applicants that you've worked with?
Yeah, definitely. So I think to sit down and think about some of the things, figure out in a reflective manner, right? Because writing your personal statement completely in future tense doesn't give us a chance to get to know who you are at this time, right? And you may be like, hey, I'm going to be a criminal defense lawyer. I'm going to do this. And you get here and you're like, oh, estate planning is such a cool class. I'm an estate planner now, which by the way, it is. And I thought that was going to be me. But just honestly start making a list, kind of trying to figure out what is important to me. Why do I even want to go to law school? Was there a class that I took that was interesting? Did I interact with somebody that made an impact on me? Was there a moment that kind of made me look at things a little bit differently? What's challenged me? What's inspired me? What's made me feel like empowered? What's made me kind of worried? Who do I want to help? And I think starting with those questions can help narrow in a topic. Also, just call me and we'll figure it out. We can talk through it.
Okay, excellent. That's great advice. And what I'm hearing too, though, is that it's the most important thing is that individualized approach, is making sure that it reflects you as a candidate as opposed to what you think they want to read.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Another question, and I think that you did address this a little bit as well. How does a resume in a law school application differ from one that you would give to a potential employer? So when we think about an employer resume, we're looking at one page, very targeted, very concise. So I heard you say follow instructions in terms of length. Similar rules to no personal pronouns, etc.
Yes. Okay. So most of the students that submit applications to us do a one-page. I think we have like a two-page max. It's really just highlighting what you've done. So it actually, if you have one already made for an employer, you can start with that and then just kind of expand on it a little bit, right? If it was an employer that was looking for a manager, and so you like hyper specified the manager skills that you have, you can take a step a little bit back and also include some of the auxiliary things that you did that would be relevant to the law school world, like any writing you did, any team buildings exercises that you did, any presentations, any major works of writing that you got to submit or present or anything like that. There's also seems to be some misconception that law schools don't like sororities or fraternities on the resume. I will tell you that's definitely not true. I'm very proud of Delta Zeta. And truthfully, those organizations, if the admissions committee is a former member of one of those groups, they know how much work goes into those things and they know how much community service those groups do. And so don't feel that you need to short sell yourself because somebody somewhere at some point said that they don't like Greek life. That's not true.
That's great advice. I'm hearing too with like the publications, presentations, there's even some dip into what might be on a CV. So there's
Yes.
definitely some overlap there.
Mhm.
Awesome. One question came in. So when is it best to start practicing for the LSAT? So how early is too early maybe?
Yes, great question. This is a personal choice. So typically you want to try to take the LSAT if you can the summer before your senior year. And that will give you time to, if you get your score and you're not happy, you still have time to take it again in the fall, plenty of time before the actual application is due. As far as when you should start studying, it's a totally personal call. Some students can study a month, 2 months and be totally ready to go, that you're happy with their score. Some folks do need upwards of 6 to 7 months just to feel more comfortable, possibly even, I've definitely seen students take an entire year to practice for it and get ready for it. So I would probably suggest maybe at the start, maybe mid-sophomore, start of your junior year, look at it. Just look at it, maybe take a practice test, kind of see what it is, what's it about, how comfortable you are with it, how upset you feel after it, and then maybe start to make a plan of action at that point. But looking at it your freshman year, the majority of your sophomore year, it's probably a little early. At that point, really, you should just be focusing on maintaining a steady GPA rather than worrying about what we're looking for.
Okay, perfect. And so the last question that we have, so and this is, I think, especially relevant considering where we're at, where you talked about the virtual experience.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for applicants in helping to determine whether or not a law school is a good fit for them?
Yeah, that is a great question. And honestly, it kills me because tech, our law school, once people come here are always like, oh, I'm so pleasantly surprised. And I'm like, I'm slightly, offended at your reaction, but also I know it's a great place. Visiting schools is such an important part of finding the right fit. I have all my fingers and toes crossed that we'll begin to allow folks back in the building by next semester. But if we don't, most, if not all, the law schools at this point have created a virtual tour that kind of reflects what's going on. I know ours definitely does because I made it. So like, you need some music, we need some, whatever. Also, truthfully, setting up times to meet with admissions individuals. If you really want to talk to a law student, asking if there's a law student that you can chat with. Here at Tech, we have a student recruitment council. I put all of them on notice that if I have a student that wants to talk to them, and they need to talk to them. So you'll be able to kind of get a sense. Honestly, COVID has actually been very helpful for us insofar as showing who our admissions office is, because we've continued to be very responsive to students, as helpful as we can, as transparent as we can with what is going on. And we've actually gotten some feedback that has been a very big contrast to some of their experience with other schools. And so that kind of shows, how much attention and support the staff is willing to give during this time, which will carry on to your actual experience. So reaching out to schools, seeing what they have available, and see what they're doing may help with fit for some. I mean, in the situation that we're all stuck in, it will help with fit up to this point.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Those are the questions that we have. If students have any further questions, what's the best way? How do they reach out?
Yeah, you can definitely, is my screen still shared? I don't even know.
Sorry.
If it is, the admissions email box, there's only 2 of us that actually look at it, and it's the first thing I look at every single morning. So you're definitely welcome to send an email that way. Once I respond, I actually have a link in my signature where you can go in to schedule an individual Zoom meeting or phone call. And so if you do have further questions, you're more than welcome to set up a time that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. We had over 30, with about 35 attendees. So I know there's a big group of students interested, and we'll make sure and send the follow-up recording to all those that are registered as well. But thank you again for taking the time to present and to meet with our students.
Of course. Thank you all for having me and staying with us this afternoon. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay. Bye, Danielle.
Bye.
Okay, so as I said, we will be sharing the recording with those who registered. That will take probably a little bit to process, so be patient, please. If you do have any questions, that admissions.law@ttu.edu is going to be the perfect resource for that. If you got everything you need and you feel like now I want to start on my personal statement or my resume, please feel free to reach out to the Career Center. We would love to help you with that process. You can do so by giving us a call at 806-742-2210, and one of our front staff can help get you set up with a counselor, whether that is in a phone, a video, or a face-to-face appointment. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope you have a great day.